Hey sis, each month inside Entrusted Women University, we feature a brand new interview. You can watch the full interview only in Entrusted Women University, but you can check out this snippet right now.
But there's credibility to journalism because there's fact checking that happens. There's a skill set that happens. You can't just get on there and be grammatically all over the place. You can't just say whatever you want. You have to be there's a as I said, there's a credibility there, and I wanted to create an opportunity not only for myself to experience that and speaking there, but to open the door for other people. I reckon.
Hey, Entrusted Women, I'm so excited to be with you, and I'm bringing you a man. What? Most of the time, I am interviewing women. I have only interviewed like one man. So, Sho,
Oh wow,
welcome. You got heavy shoes to fill. You got a
yeah,
weight on your shoulder because
this is unprecedented. Okay,
you're in an estrogen rich environment.
yeah.
We rarely open it for testosterone, but here you are.
Hey, look,
Welcome.
I thank you. One, I'm wearing a pink shirt just to kind of,
Represent.
yeah, and I have a wife and a daughter. My oldest child is a daughter, so I have a lot of time with them. So I know how to maneuver when I am not the majority. Let's go.
Okay, awesome, awesome. You're welcome here. So, some of you may know Sho Baraka as a rapper, as an
Hmm.
MC, but he's also a writer, y'all. Oh my gosh, I went and read the article on CT, and I really needed a dictionary. I'm not gonna lie. I needed to like what was that analogy? What is this referring to? Do I know this? Have I read that book? I don't know. I mean, I'm just keeping it 100. So just
Oh
in
man, well,
case
thank
you
you.
guys don't know Sho Baraka, I'm gonna read his bio and then we're gonna dive into all the things and how his new role at CT can benefit you.
Absolutely.
So Ami Sho Baraka is a self-described polymath. And I'm so glad he has a definition in his bio because it's like, what? A person of wide ranging knowledge or learning. Sho Baraka has spent the last 17 years traveling the world as a recording artist, consultant, speaker, and writer. He has 4 solo albums, 3 feature films, appearances, 1 book. He saw that it was good, a lion, a tiger, and a bear. He's done a lot. Whether he is operating as a creative implementer, which apparently that's not a word, um, or as a solutionary. I would if you hadn't have put the parenthesis in the bio, I'd have been like, oh, implementer. Okay. Show is wisely discerning the times while attempting to bring restoration and redemption. He is the co-founder of the AND campaign and a founding member of the internationally known hip hop consortium 116 Click and record label Reach Records. Show served as a visiting professor at Wake Forest University and Warner Pacific University, and he's currently working on My Boulevard, which I guess that's out. That was out before. That's already out. My
Yeah, that's
Boulevard.
it. Yeah.
To build a community called Good Culture, a space that will galvanize cultivators around story, art, and ideas. And this is the most important part of his bio. He lives in Atlanta. Shout out to the ATL with Patrice, his wife of 21 years, and their 3 children. Children Zoe, Zakai, is it Zakai?
Zakai and Zimri.
Zakai, Zimri. Sho and Patrice have 2 boys on the autism spectrum and find themselves as ambassadors and advocates in autism. I don't know how you do all that,
I
but
just
praise
don't do it well. So
God. Okay.
I do it all with great mediocrity.
Talk
So
about it. Talk about it. I didn't have any questions about having 2 children on the autism spectrum, but
yeah.
I mean, I would love for you to just speak about that. Then we'll dive into like writing and all of the other things.
Well, it's definitely been one of the greatest sanctifiers in my life. People talk about marriage as being something that teaches you a lot about, yourself and who you are, how selfish you are. But there's a different type of sanctification that happens around children, especially when your children don't perform or don't exhibit behaviors that you expect them to exhibit, or perform in ways that you expected them to perform, especially when they were born. Because I don't know how mothers do it with daughters or maybe even boys, but fathers live through their boys.
Hmm.
And you're like, oh, they're going to be this, they're going to do that, they're going to just like me. Can't wait till the day that I get to teach them how to play this or engage in that or how to treat a young lady. And when you realize you probably won't be able to experience all that, it does something to you. And so you can either allow that to create some sort of crippling effect in your life, or you can use it as a way to grow and learn, to grow closer to people, to grow greater compassion, to drive yourself closer to the Lord. And so there's a whole lot that I've learned in that. So it's been something that's been quite beneficial in my life. And I know it sounds strange, but I see it as Paul's thorn. And as Paul had a thorn in his side, these are these people. They're all here for me. And so
Yeah.
no, so
No, I'm not. Did you said something about the people in the background?
yeah, I was just saying.
I'm not. I'm all into what you're saying. Like
Oh, love that, love that.
the,
So yeah,
there's
anyway,
people in the background. You guys don't be distracted. Stay focused.
but no, so last night I was saying Paul talks about the thorn in his side, and there's his grace is sufficient because that thorn drives him closer to the Lord. And so for me, autism is one of those things.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Not to digress, but I guess I am digressing, even though I said not to digress. But earlier this year, the Lord was like, "Do you trust me?" And I was like, "Yeah, Lord, I trust you. What are you talking about? I'm out here speaking for you. Write a book for you, whatever. What you talking about?" And He started bringing people to mind. And like
Mm.
one of the people He brought was like my kids, and I was like, "Wait a minute." That's where the trust ends, Jesus. I feel you on that. I realized that my level of trust was kind of like centered around what I can control,
Mhm.
but then when I can't control it, then I start spazzing out and having anxiety attacks and stuff like that. It's like, okay, no, you really don't trust me. So I got mad respect for you, not just for the things that you've accomplished and you've done, but most definitely for you being a advocate for children with special needs.
Right.
And sometimes we have this kind of glorified view of Christianity, especially for like the people in the forefront, like they're like,
Yes.
but no, like you're living real life,
Yeah.
so anyways, okay, let's talk about you as the writer. When did you know you wanted to be a writer? Were you like little show with a journal in your hand? Were you the odd child? I feel like you were the odd.
Yes, I was absolutely. It was a very young age, and I think that was just the cultivation of my parents. Who it's a couple of things. One, we loved movies growing up, so I watched a lot of movies, and movies are just visual stories. And so my thought was, well, I know I can't make a movie, but I can tell a story. And so I decided to start telling stories in my own way. So as a child, whether it be watching like the Goonies or Stand By Me, I would be like, well, let me tell my own story about kids in my community going on an adventure to find treasure or whatever. And that's the earliest memory of storytelling. Around the same time, my mother in particular, would force me to do reports on obscure Black historical figures, not like your Martin Luther Kings or you know, your, I don't know, Malcolm X's, Rosa Parks. And that's when she introduced me to the Harlem Renaissance. And she was like, I want you to read this poetry and write something about this person, write something about that person. And so that also not only introduced me to great literary agents, but it also introduced me to poetry as well. So I kind of fell in love with writing and poetry, or skillful writing through rhyme at a young age. And I had two older brothers, so they love hip hop music. So it was like this kind of culminating,
Hmm.
um, I guess you can say, cultivation.
Yeah, shout out to your mom.
Yeah,
Wow, that's
yeah, yeah.
awesome. So real quick, can you name like a book or an author that inspired you and why?
At that age, or are you talking about just right now?
Well, I don't want you to say Dr. Seuss.
Well, shoot, at that age, it was anything that was, um, at that age, my parents. So, like I said, my mom was an activist. She was a Black Panther. So I remember in the eighth grade, her husband, because my mom got remarried, her husband made me read the autobiography of Malcolm X. I'm in
Hmm,
the eighth grade doing a book report on the autobiography of Malcolm X. A lot of that stuff was over my head. I didn't understand a lot of the, I guess you say, the social plight he was dealing with. But I will say, like, at that, it made me aware to who I was, and I think how society viewed me. In some ways, I think it also probably put too much on me as a young child. Maybe no one 13, 14 or younger should be walking around with the burdens of blackness, if you will. But I think it also equipped me and developed me to be more keen as I got older. So, but if I were to say today, my favorite author is probably Zora Neale Hurston.
right. Which
Toni
you referenced
Morrison.
in the article.
Yeah,
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 you referenced in the article. I was like, did I read that book? Oh my gosh, I don't understand the reference because I didn't read the book. I gotta go read the book, so then I gotta come back and read the article so I can understand what he was saying.
yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
okay, so now you know you love to write, you're creating these stories, and you decide you're gonna pursue a career in writing rap, you're gonna be a rapper. How does this happen? You meet some people, which by the way, I low-key wanna be a rapper. And and I do try
Let's
to
go.
I try in my
Let's do
car
it.
to my kids complete and total and utter embarrassment and shame. But I do try. That's neither here
So,
that
are
has
you
nothing
are
to
you
do.
freestyling? What's happening? No, let's stay here for a second.
Um,
Are you freestyling? Are you rapping other
I'm
people's
not
lyrics? What are you doing?
freestyling. I'm not freestyling. I'm trying to catch all the words of the rap as it's coming out and trying to rap with them and trying to have swag,
Yeah.
in the car. That's the level that I'm
Well, that's
currently
that's a good start because what you're learning now is it's like dance. If you watch somebody else dance and you mimic their dance moves, it teaches you rhythm, it teaches you how to hit particular beats. And once you kind of divert from watching them, then you're able to have your own canvas and you know how to start. You like at least you sketch. Same thing with rap. Like if
wait,
you
wait.
study the rappers, now you can begin to start writing your own. Because what you're
Now
doing, writers do this as well. You still like an artist, right? You kind of build yourself off of books that you've read, and then you start to develop your own voice. So you got to start somewhere.
well,
Yeah.
the Holy Spirit just brought to my mind back in like fifth grade, I did create a dare rap. Uh,
Yo, I
and I
think I
got
did the
it.
same
I got
thing.
it inside. I'll rap it for you.
Let's go.
Nobody has ever gotten this, so you guys are being blessed today.
The
Um, Here's a
no
little
drugs
lesson
bar.
about using drugs. It's not very smart. I'd rather have hugs. It messes up your mind and your body too. So if you don't use drugs, you might have an IQ. Using drugs isn't a small situation. It messes up minds all over the nation. You need to put your mind together and stay on top. Because if you use drugs, you might just drop. One reason why the world is so messed up today, we got a drug problem and it won't go away unless you I that's all I can remember, but throw your hands
First of
up.
all, let's
Throw your hands up.
let's commend you for memorizing a rap from fifth grade. That is
Thank you.
excellent.
I might can't remember where my kids need to be this afternoon, but I know that fifth grade rap.
Because that was a moment of you shining in front of all those students. They was look. I had a similar experience with Dare. With Dare, it was both. I guess you can say insightful and traumatizing. Because yeah, it's really interesting dynamic there. But anyway, yeah, it's interesting. Thank you for sharing that. That was
You're
great of
welcome.
you.
I hope you've been blessed and all of you as well. Okay, so how did you get from I have a passion for writing to I want to do rap or I want to write a book? What happened?
I wrote a song about how drugs ruins the world, and at a Dare program. And so now it's playing.
Look at God.
Look, and then look.
Only do it.
Yeah, so I think it started off as poetry because I started off writing poetry, and as I got to high school, and as I said, I had older brothers who listened to hip hop, and hip hop was by far my favorite genre to listen to. I loved listening to it to do what you would do in the car, mimic it, recite it, and then at some point, what I realized is that the girls at school like rappers more than they like poets. So I was like, well, let me transition to rapping.
Oh,
And
Jesus.
so come on, somebody. It was before the Lord had snatched me up. And so I started rapping. That's when I was around 15, 16 years old and kind of never turned around since. And then in college, while I was at Tuskegee University, became a Christian. Um, that was my first time writing like raps about my life change in a worldview from which Christ has now given me. And it was really interesting because I rapped before my freshman and sophomore year, and then when I became a Christian, people saw me now rapping about this new life, and they would be like, "Yo, that's really interesting." And I had a crew that was we would be around, like go around battling my freshman and sophomore year, and then I switched to start rapping with some Christians, and it was really interesting. So that transformation happened when I was in college.
Mm.
Shout out to the Cross Movement as well, who were a rap group back in the late '90s, early 2000s that had a huge indelible impact on me and my cultivation and formation as a not only just as a artist, but as just a young man who was trying to find his identity as someone who wanted to be tethered to the culture while at the same time not lose the fidelity of scripture and who Jesus was.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Were you an English major?
No, I was a party major in my first 2 years of college, and
Help,
then
Lord. Help, Lord. Okay, what did you graduate with? What was the degree?
television and film, television and film, and then I also so I did so I so it's long but short story, very very short. I figured out a system that I could keep my credits in television and film through this Department of Applied Arts and Sciences if I took enough credits in English, anthropology, and public administration. And I think it was somewhere around 16 credit hours in each. So, yes, English was one of the three disciplines that I dove into. And that's actually around that time is when I fell in love with literature and started to read a lot.
Okay. All right then. And then from there, how did you start rapping as a like a profession?
So I moved to Texas and went to school in Texas, and that's where I met. I was roommates with Lecrae and Tadashi and a bunch of other
It
artists,
all
and
makes sense now.
yep. And so we were just rambunctious students at one point in time, and then we were like, "Hey, let's do stuff on campus just to show people how much we love Jesus." And Lecrae was the most serious of us all, and then he kind of took it and ran with it. And then he was like, "Hey, I want to start a label, and I want to sign you guys. I want you guys to be a part of this movement." And we were like, "Let's do it." And from there was the start of our careers.
Wow.
Yep.
Mm, my God. Okay. We don't have time because I could really go into a whole just rap.
Yeah.
But a friend of mine had shared this graphic on Facebook one time, and it was talking about all the different genres of music and which genre uses the most words.
Hmm.
And when it got to the category of like rap music, the words were so far beyond any of the other genres. I was like, "Oh, snap." And I've always been a word person. I think that's why I love rap so much, because I'm so challenged mentally to comprehend all
Hmm.
of the analogies that are being made, the references, the slang, the historical, um, references, or it's just it just really stimulates me
Yeah.
mentally. So I have just a high, high, high level of respect for rappers, and that's probably why I want to be with. That's probably what it would be with it. Jesus, like not in this life, but in eternity. Okay, so let's keep moving because I could really like go hard. on rap. Okay, let's talk about my Boulevard
Well, let
and
me
good.
let me let me before
Oh,
we
go
get there,
ahead.
because this is interesting. I like where you. It's not quite what you were saying, but I think there's something there, and it's something that I would love to dive deeper into. As a research and as a study, I think there is something unique about rappers, and I think in every rapper who's disciplined, right? Within every rapper who's disciplined and who knows how to string together sentences. There are some rappers who are just they're not really articulate, but most rappers have a sense of understanding and they can be articulate. I think in every rapper there's a novelist. I think there's a writer. If they really took
Most
the
definitely.
time to sit down and say, you know what, I want to write something that is thoughtful, whether it be speeches, whether it be books, whether it be articles, because the amount of literary devices that rappers use are the tantamount of that of like Shakespeare and people who, your your Faulkners, your whoever, like whether it be, and you talked about different analogies, metaphors, similes, double entendres. So alliteration, these are things that some of them they wouldn't know what to call it. Probably they don't know that they're using it, but they're
That's
doing it.
that's good.
And
Yeah.
so I think my goal is to even show hip hop artists that there's a potential second career that you can go into once you're done rapping as somebody's writer in some form or fashion, whether that be comics. We've seen certain people do that. We've seen people go into film. Boots Riley, who did "Sorry to Bother You." So there, I think even I forget his name. One of the rappers wrote a novel that was pretty successful. So yeah, I mean, there's Logic wrote a novel, and so there's different there's different avenues for which rappers can take because it's writing. It's just a different type of writing. So
Right. But I'm saying, well, but when I read that, I haven't read your book, but when I read the Christianity Today article, it was written like I mean, a seasoned person that had spent all their time in
mhm.
nonfiction writing or article type writing. It was so next level for me. It was. I
Thank
was
you.
like, what the world? But I could see the bridge between rap and you writing something like that because you're used to making all these connections in the first paragraph, you know?
Yeah,
So, okay, anyways. All right, you ready to move on? Because he said, no, I'm
I
gonna
am.
hijack this. I'm hijacking the interview. This is where I want to go. And I was like,
I'm
oh,
sorry.
okay,
I'm
then.
sorry.
No, I'm okay. I'm okay. Okay, let's talk about My Boulevard and Good Culture Institute. So we can get to CT. All right.
Yeah. So my Boulevard is an institution that my brother started. My brother is a pastor here in Atlanta. He started that years ago because he realized that there are a lot of young men and women who wanted to be developed. Well, first of all, it started off with like just pastors who wanted some sort of cultivation, wanted a community, but they felt like for the most part, if they wanted to plant churches or learn how to be a healthy pastor in an urban context, they had to go to like white people to learn how to do that. And he was like, man, I want to be one of his favorite. I want to be the last generation of people who have to go outside of the urban context to be equipped. And so he started My Boulevard. Well, recently it's went from not just pastors to just basic leaders across the board, people who are just looking to be impactful in their community. Good culture is a subsidiary underneath the My Boulevard family, which is mostly focused on what I call like the poets and the polymaths, people who are using their vocation in either some sort of creative way or entrepreneurial way. That doesn't mean that you have to only be some sort of creative, but maybe you are an entrepreneur in some sort of fashion and you don't work within the church, but you work outside the church, but you see this as ministry in some sort of way. And that doesn't mean you use your job solely as a means to share the gospel, but it's like you could be an educator, but the way you educate is creative. And you like, I just want to know how to be a better educator in this non-Christian school and, etc. So what we do as Good Culture is try to help not only create community for people, but to train and equip individuals on how to use their gifts, their skills, and to advocate for other people. So it's a community, it's coaching, it's events, it's all of these things. So, yep.
And it's not it's directed towards people of color, but you
Not
don't have to be a
necessarily.
person. Okay, okay.
Right. Yeah. So it's mostly directed for people who find themselves compassionate or passionate about urban areas, dense and
Mhm.
diverse areas. So if there's an area where there's dense diversity, then you could be a white person who's like, man, I live amongst a bunch of black people and I'm just trying to figure out how to be an effective minister here.
Okay.
Or I could be a Latino sister who's, boom, boom, boom. I want to figure out how to use my painting to do, etc. And so what we're trying to do is create space for folks to be equipped. We have resources on our platform, our My Boulevard platform. We have like master classes that you can watch that help you with either everything from time management to emotional health to I have a course on my book. He saw that it was good. So it's different stuff like that. So it's everything from coaching, counseling to community to equipping people who are in the urban context trying to make a difference.
I'm realizing that we don't have enough time, but because I was having this conversation and also my husband and I just went. This is and also a spider web, so you just gotta try to
I'm
jump on
with
the
you.
web.
I'm
And
following.
okay, all right, all right. We went to a weekend to remember, and we saw the video of you and your wife, and I
Yep.
was like, oh, that's Sho Baraka, but I didn't really know who you were, but I knew who you were, but I hadn't listened to
Yeah.
any of your music, but I went and did it to get ready for this interview, but I was like, oh, that's Sho Baraka, blah blah blah. And since then I've had conversations with people that are like, there's like a wealth of
Mhm.
resources that are being offered in majority white settings that urban settings don't have access to, but it needs to be packaged in a way that urban settings would want to receive that information, because the
Yeah.
way that it's
Correct.
packaged presently might not be as effective if it's taken as is.
Correct.
So I don't know if that's what you're saying good culture is, or
It's some of that. Yeah. I think you. Yeah. It's a lot of that. It's trying to figure out how to equip people to do the work where they are so they don't have to leave. So, for instance, if we're going to use the weekend to remember analogy, like, why can't we just create something that is more culturally relevant for people of color versus saying, hey, you know what you need to do? Go to weekend to remember.
yeah.
So, not saying that we can remember is not useful and it's not helpful because, I wouldn't have done the
Yeah,
interview
I
if I
was
didn't think
here.
it was good. Right. So it was great. But to your point, there are some videos, there are some interviews, there are some discussions that are are situated in circumstances in cultural awareness that may not be necessarily for you and I, right?
Mhm.
And not to say that there is a particular hierarchy or to marriage, but there are certain issues that certain people deal with when they're from particular cultural backgrounds. And so we want to be sensitive to that in the cultivation and development space. So
Okay. Facts on facts. And if you guys are interested in the work that Sho and his brother are doing with my Boulevard, just Google search it and it's gonna pop up. But I'll also put the link. I'll put the link wherever the description section is shared. I'll put the link too. Sorry about that. Okay. Okay, now let's talk about you moved to Christianity today, which I was like, Morgan told me about this, and I was like, oh, okay, Sho Rock the rapper. Okay, all right, whatever. And then I go and Google search and I was like, oh, okay, so he wrote about this and he has some people respond one way, some people respond another way. And then there's some people out there that they saying other things, and I'm like, what in the world? I didn't know
mhm.
it was a big deal. But in saying that, let me just say, when I published my book and I started doing these podcasts, that's when I really realized I was like, oh, it's not one church. We kind of all over the place. We kind of got some serious divides in terms of, you know, who we believe actually knows Jesus
Right, right,
and
absolutely.
is trying to be a disciple. not
Yeah.
not just entitled a Christian, but who we believe actually knows Jesus and is following Jesus. It's like a line of demarcation. And then if you're on this podcast, then oh, you're in that camp, and if you're on this podcast, and
Right. Yep.
speak at this place, and oh, and then because you spoke there and you was on this podcast, you can't come on my podcast because you in that camp, and apparently you must have voted like this, and this is how all your stuff looked because you was over there, and I was like, and so I'm saying a lot of stuff, but I'm gonna put the link to the article because I think everybody needs to read it. I really appreciated you saying peculiar. We're supposed to be peculiar. We're not
Yeah.
supposed to be in boxes. We're not supposed to be pegged as, oh, that's what you think. Jesus wasn't in nobody's box. He wasn't in
Come on.
nobody's box. But I feel like you moving to CT kind of just boom, like just brought a whole bunch of more stuff to the surface where people was like, "What? I can't believe you did that. That's not a good move. What they doing over there? They don't know God, or he
Right. Yeah.
switched over to this side or whatever." So, can you talk about all that? It's not really a question. It's just like a statement.
No, there's a lot in there. So yeah, I already knew that there would be some of that, but when I actually joined and they made the announcement, I was actually kind of shocked by how big the creator impact was, and a lot of it is I'm unbothered by it because for all of my career, I've always been the type of individual who lived by his own convictions, not saying that I don't have community or wise individuals around me to give me guidance, but oftentimes when you are living to please, not oftentimes, all the time, when you're trying to please everybody, you please no one.
Hmm.
And so you have to live by your convictions. And so the conviction that one, CT is a wonderful platform that as long, now granted, I don't agree with everything CT publishes, and there's a lot that CT and I may disalign ourselves with, but we agree with more than I think we disagree with. And as long as it's a platform that's trying to give an honest critique of society from a biblical perspective, I think that I can partner with that organization. And the best way to create change is not to just throw grenades from the distance, is to try to figure out how do I integrate the system and create opportunities for people to speak from this particular institution rather than just destroy all institutions and decentralize all voices and feel like, well, whoever speaks the loudest gets the voice. It's like, no, there's a system here. Legacy media is still legitimate to some degree. And there's something authentically, I guess, sophisticated around writing still. People need to write. People need to communicate. And journalism has a sense of credibility around it that I guess you can say that some podcasting and some YouTubing doesn't, because anybody can just get on YouTube and just say whatever they want. And there's something, there's credibility to journalism because there's fact checking that happens. There's a skill set that happens. You can't just get on there and be, grammatically all over the place. You can't just say whatever you want. You have to be, as I said, there's a credibility there. And I wanted to create an opportunity not only for myself to experience that and to speak from there, but to open the door for other people.
Hey
I
sis, I
recognize
hope
that.
you enjoyed that interview snippet, and I want you to be sure and check out Entrusted Women University by visiting membership.entrustedwomen.com to see the interviews in their entirety. And join us next week for more content to help you on your writing and speaking journey.